Well, hello there everyone! Ys Oath and Felghana was Falcom's attempt at remaking Ys 3. It was a bold choice adapting an old 2D PC game into a 3D game, though this game has a lot of 2D sections for better or for worse. But overall, I think they did a solid job with a healthy lineup of 17 bosses and a notably improved combat system over Ys 6 Arc of Nepishtim. However, while I think this game has higher highs than Nepishtim, it also has lower lows. We will be seeing the amazing tier, I am going to say that. However, there are also some really terrible bosses, and this game's bad bosses are kind of front-loaded. And I should also mention that for this boss ranking, I will be excluding the 2 super bosses from this list because I didn't want to spend my time trying to unlock them, since it requires beating boss rush mode on the highest difficulty, and that's not my idea of fun. That being said, with Ys Memoire as the big remake, remaster, whatever the heck it's supposed to be, of the game right around the corner, I figured now's the best time to cover another entry in the Ys series after the kind of boring Arc of Nepishtim. So, welcome everyone to my boss ranking for Ys, Oath and Felghana. Buckle up because we're diving into the Shadow Realm. Number 17, Gyalva. Get ready for some angry rants and colorful language this video, boys and girls, and say hello to the boss that caused me to rage quit this game for over 3 years. Gyalva is terrible. A decent-ish concept for an arena having platforms that can be elevated by heat-based attacks, but it's basically never to your benefit and always to your detriment because there's spikes on the bottom, and anytime he hits the platforms with a fireball, the spikes will flip up, meaning you rarely just take a single hit from this boss. And his fireball attack is fine. It's fair to dodge and can even be used as a chance to get some hits in on him as it launches you into the air. But his charge attack, oh freaking boy. God help you if he starts doing his charge attack, because not only do you take damage from Gyalva, but you also get hit from the platform flipping up, spiking you, then flipping down again to hit you with the spikes yet again, meaning you take a minimum of 3 hits and now you've lost a third of your health. And yeah, this is by far the hardest attack to dodge because only the very edge of the arena on the opposite side of where he started the charge is safe. And if you're near him when the charge starts, tough shit. Even with dash, you won't be able to outrun him, so take damage, idiot. And that's kind of a problem when you can't heal in this game. There are no healing items. At least not that you can just hold anyways. They're only dropped from enemies you kill and you have to just pick them up immediately. He has some kind of cool looking attacks like charging into the foreground and background, but there's this little issue that you're in a 2D arena and he spends the majority of the fight in either the foreground or background where you can't hit him. Oh, but hey, you can shoot fireballs at him, right? Small problem. He's a fire bat, so your fireballs does both jack and shit to him, and you have to wait until he gets in the arena proper and either gets low enough for you to hit or raises the platform up for you to hit, and you have about 3 seconds to do damage to him, when this boss has more health than any other fight up to this point in the game, all while you're hearing that annoying torch combustion sound constantly. I despise this boss fight, and it's the reason I originally rage quit this game and refused to play it for over 3 years, despite quite enjoying the other Ys games, for that matter. Up to this point, I'd played games like Ys Origins, Arc of Nepishtim, and 7, and yeah, I had a good time with them, even if Nepishtim was kind of whatever. But sometimes, when a game gets a re-release, I hope the troubled boss balance gets rebalanced to be better, but in this case, not. I'm hoping Memoire straight up lobotomizes this piece of crap. And we've still got more bad bosses to cover, don't be fooled, this is just the worst of the bunch. Number 16, Garland. Our first fight with Garland is an unwinnable encounter because of his invincible shield, putting him in a cutscene tier level fight. And honestly, I kind of hate this fight because, yeah, I get it, it's meant to service the plot, but the weapon to break his shield and kill him is right there. Adol could literally walk 5 feet, pick it up, and get to kicking his ass, or at the very least putting up some level of fight. But we could save 2 hours of playtime and potentially Nell's life if he just grabbed the sword and killed the fucker right here and now, but he doesn't, and it's annoying. I don't like it. Number 15, Dularn. It pains me to say this, but the first boss of this game does not make a good showing at all. Partly because it's unnecessarily difficult due to the early game limitations. You don't have double jump, you don't have any way to block, dash, no fireballs, nothing. All you have is your basic single jump and a dream, and I guess your basic level 1 sword. This would be fine, but between Dularn's Blade Dance and Blade Slice attacks, these aren't too bad. Blade Dance is simply you dodge it by continuing to run while not being too close or being on top of the opponent, while Blade Slice is a jump over the blades with good timing. But then there's Blade Spin, which is just a pain in the butt, and you can't reliably dodge it with your limited moveset at this point in the game, or at the very least, I can't reliably dodge it. I don't know, maybe I just suck, who knows. And I don't like it because the first boss of the game can kind of start feeling oppressive, and I remember when I first played this game, in that file I rage quit at Gyalva, I died over 10 times to this fight, getting the Consult the FAQ Already achievement. And okay, for the record, I'd already beaten Ys Origins 7 in Arkham Nepishtim. Now, that achievement is funny as hell in hindsight, but yeah, I gotta be honest, this fight feels a bit too feast or famine for such an early game boss. The fight would have been better if you had any evasion options whatsoever to improve things, but oh well. Number 14, Elphael. Yeah, after the dud that was Dularn, the second boss doesn't do much better. You gain access to fireballs, but all you do here is jump or run to dodge her blades as her health bar gets lower. She has 2 new attacks when she gets to half health, which really is just more of the same. Sure, the fight has a fast pace, but does it make it fun? No, not really. It's thankfully not hard. You can pretty much first try this boss due to her really low damage output and face tank everything unless you're on, like, Nightmare. But because of how fast her attacks come out, you basically have to know the telegraph of what attack is what in advance, because by the time the move comes out, it's too late to realistically dodge at this point in the game. Maybe I'm too harsh on this boss, but really, I have to stand by my opinion. The first third of Oath and Felghana really sucks on the boss front. But at least the level design's pretty good, and again, the story's interesting enough to keep me going, assuming I don't just give up at Gyalva. Number 13, the Valestine Soldiers. Yep, that sure is regular enemies with boss music playing. Now, you could argue I shouldn't even include this on the list, and fair enough, but I'd say this is a great litmus test for showing just how bad the bosses below it are, when 5 regular enemies from the next dungeon with boss music playing are better than a quarter of this game's boss fights. Look, I like Oath and Felghana. It's got some very high highs, but oh my god, the lows are low. Number 12, Chester. Okay, hold your pitchforks, everyone. This is talking about his first fight, not his second. Actually, you know what? No, maybe do get your pitchforks, because I'm gonna vent. I fucking hate Chester as a character. He is such an unlikable piece of shit that the game clearly wants you to feel bad for, but I don't. He treats his adopted father like crap, his sister like crap, and everyone else who was close to him like crap, even when they show all the understanding in the world and try time and time again to get a reasonable explanation out of him, hear him out, understand his actions, do what they can to help him, and he goes and he nearly kills Dogi. He wants his revenge on Count Maguire, but why not just fucking murk his ass? You're already in his inner guard and you're one of the people he keeps in his private group. Oh, it's because you don't want to drag your family into it? Well, maybe you should have thought of that before you turned most of the castle into demons that then attacked the village, nearly killing Elena in the process, making your actions extremely ironic, on top of the whole damn demon portal bullshit, which, by the way, killed a bunch of people in the castle guard, or regular staff just going about their regular jobs, or worse, transformed them into violent psychotic demons. Which is a fate worse than death in this series, and you could count on both hands the number of people that actually make it out of Valestine Castle, with fingers to spare. And when he does quit being a dickhead, well, guess what? That's only after Garland betrays him, and then he gets two-shot by Dularn like a little bitch and spends the last act wallowing in self-pity before deciding at the final boss fight, guess it's time to kill myself! So no, I don't feel bad for him, he's a piece of shit and I'm glad he dies. And you know what? I also hate the cutscene that follows after the fight ends. Not because it gets cut short, I get it, you gotta build up for the rematch at the end of the game, but the part that follows with Adol just sitting there and accepting getting kicked off a cliff to his death. Oh, but he doesn't want to kill people. Bullshit. Adal is not Batman. He doesn't have qualms with taking another life if it's to protect someone innocent like, oh, I don't know, Father Pierre, the guy he was tasked to find and return home safely. And sure, the soldiers are just soldiers, not evil, necessarily, but tough shit. This isn't Celceta or Balduke, where competent leaders work to have a good relationship with their colonies. In games like Felghana and Nepishdom, the Roman army is an invasive, borderline dictatorial force that doesn't hesitate to capture, kill, and enslave innocent people because 99% of the soldiers are, I was just following orders, headasses. Adal would not be scared of the number of foes, and he would not be scared to take a life or 6. Not even counting Ys 10 or Celceta, because they weren't out yet by the time this game was made. And yet, he's already killed multiple people because they were an active threat to the lives of innocents. Just to name a few: Ginocres, Fact, Zava, Dallas, Gaddis, Bami, Gruda, Arim. And later in the game, he'll kill another person that was arguably way more deserving of mercy and a second chance because, unfortunately, Adal's not a character that's allowed to hesitate during tough decisions. I hate Chester as a character, and I hate this cutscene so much. This boss fight is just whatever. There's a better version of the endgame. I needed to vent, and there is one thing I like about Chester's character, but we'll talk about it when it's relevant. Number 11, the Zephyl-Zam Shell Tiger. Originally, I had this boss fight in mediocre tier, but when I went back to record it, honestly, it's not too bad, just a little bit fast. His attacks are surprisingly all well telegraphed. It's got a nice fast pace for a mini-boss. He's honestly got a pretty solid array of attacks, though I will admit I do wish he would have swapped places with a boss fight before him, because that boss fight is way more involved, but this one, overall, our mutated tiger friend is a quick but fun enough and intense mini-boss, and I can say we're now in the territory of bosses I think are at least okay, and we're quickly closing in on bosses I would actually call good. Only took us like, what, 11 minutes? Number 10, Gailen. The winner of the Best Early Game Boss Award because he's the only early game boss able to claw his way up to decency. I had this whole angry rant scripted about how you're constantly taking damage from the lava, but then I remembered, oh wait, you're supposed to grab the fire amulet before making it into this arena, and the lava on the way here is to tell you you're not supposed to be here yet. The lava with the fire amulet is mostly harmless as long as you don't go and let it get to your head taking a bath in the stuff. Now, as for Gailen itself, he's kind of like Volvagia from Ocarina of Time, diving in and out of the fire pits while flying around. As he takes damage, he becomes smaller and faster, making him harder to hit and increasing the intensity of the fight. But this is also the first fight in the game with a whirlwind power, which means it's actually a good deal of fun here. And overall, I'd say it's not bad, and if this was the main boss of the fire dungeon, I would be way nicer towards the early game of both than Felghana, but unfortunately, the boss fight after this is Gialva, and, well, I've already had my crash out for that guy. Number 9, Zerderos. I'm happy to say that from here on, we actually see a massive jump in quality. I love the mechanical design of Zerderos, and while him only taking damage from the bat could get annoying, the fact that he's a mostly stationary opponent mitigates that issue quite a bit. And your shield dash helps you reduce it even more so because it lets you avoid his deadliest attacks, gives you invincibility frames, and can even damage the boss if you hit the weak spot. The missiles, lasers, and mines on top of the shockwaves make this boss feel fairly powerful, and it can be tough, but I'm glad, and I'd say that's a good thing, as this boss is kind of a gatekeeper to the endgame right before it starts turning into essentially a big grand boss rush with Chester all the way up to the final boss. Overall, I think Zerderos does a good job being your last major test to see are you ready for the challenges the endgame will face now that you have your full upgrades and you're fully kitted out. Number 8, Nel Dularn. Remember how I said Dularn could have been better if Adal had more capabilities? Well, guess what? Here you are at the end of the game with all your abilities unlocked in a near in-game build. And guess what? With the dash, double jump, whirlwind, and shield bash, her swords actually feel pretty nice and fair to dodge. What's more, the fight actually has a good challenge included. After each cycle, she'll slowly up the intensity, adding clones to attack you during her vulnerable phases, so you need to react quickly to not only dodge her attacks, but also get some hits in, because every cycle, she'll be adding another clone up until you have 6 targets in the arena, at which point she'll start bringing out 2 laser turrets to keep you moving during her sword phases, and mind your positioning. She has just enough health that the fight has a near perfect difficulty flow, and it's good fun. On top of that, I think that Nell is the best written character up to this point in the Ys series. Granted, she'd get overtaken by Unica and Toal in the very next game, but hey, credit where it's due. She was a woman of faith that unfortunately, due to her care for Nicholas Garland, she ended up getting roped into his bullshit and was turned into a half-demon, forced to become a servant of his and by extension Galbalan's whims. But throughout the game, she may talk a bit of shit while masquerading as Dularn, but she's actually preparing Adol for these final fights. And they say your truest face is shown when no one is looking, so how is Nell in private? Well, she's helping Redmont Village and its people however she can, especially caring for the children, and spending her time confessing her sins before God, essentially spending these last 12 years of her life trying to atone for her actions. And I think it's all sold and wrapped up well by her voice actress Tara Platt with an excellent performance.
Maybe this is punishment for my sins, for my blind devotion. Thank you, Adol, for saving my soul. Please help her save Elna.
Number 7, Ligati. Now for the obligatory multi-enemy boss of the game, though this one's actually pretty good. The Harpy Lady sisters here can all be attacked normally, but the green and red ones have weaknesses to Whirlwind and Fireball respectively. Why it's matched the colors, I'm not entirely sure, but whatever. While 3 versus 1 may seem overwhelming, they're all pretty passive at this point, but once one of the sisters goes down, they gain a much more aggressive attacks, such as a synchronized dive bomb, where they work to keep up the pressure, and once the second sister goes down, you'll most likely be left with only blue remaining, who now gains a superpowered dive bomb that can nuke half the arena, as well as a much larger music note bullet hell attack firing off in 3 waves. While you can obviously make this fight easier by whittling all of them down equally, the different weaknesses that the sisters have, and the lack of a weakness on Cyber Harpy Lady, means that you'll likely have to engage with each phase moveset at least a little bit, and it makes for a pretty engaging and somewhat difficult fight instead of dropping off a cliff the second one of the foes goes down. Honestly, I think this is overall a really well done gank boss, and probably the best in the series, considering that while there are better multi-bosses later on in the series, when you have party members, it's not exactly a gank boss. Number 6, Easter Siva.
Holy crap, Lois, a boss with a distinct second phase!
Easter Siva is that light at the end of the tunnel, there to let you know the bad early game bosses are over, and the bosses should at the very least be decent from this point onwards. Anyways, first you have to fight the Trimmer's Reject as he thrashes out and will sometimes spawn little crystals, bugs, which act as reflectors for lasers fired off by the giant crystal in the back. So you're going to have to do a bit of multitasking, but thankfully Homobutera over here is a simple enough fight that the crystals actually benefit the battle in the multitasking instead of detracting from it. After losing 1000 HP, the Alaskan Bullworm will die off, as well as the bugs. But at that point, the sentient crystal says, "Look at me, I'm the captain now," and at this point the fight goes from micromanaging to straight up bullet hell, as we have Make-A-Wish Baronade firing off a lot of projectiles, but his defenses are very low, so while you won't be able to hit him too much, he will have points where he goes and he opens up his crystals to either send out a bunch of crazy lasers or turn into a makeshift Beyblade. However, with your freshly powered up Whirlwind attack, you can show him who the true Beyblade is and absolutely tear into him. It's a fun fight that doesn't take too long, it's got enough challenge to keep you engaged, but at the same time, it's not something that feels overtuned like, say, Gyalba. I think this is a fun boss, and the Guardian of the Dark statue is quite fun. Plus, I mean, hey, it's a sentient Beyblade, what's not to love? Number 5, Nicholas Garland. The penultimate boss of the game, and our confrontation with this game's big bad is fun. Yeah, I actually like this boss a good bit. He's by no means the best handled villain in the series, but we actually get to interact with him as a character, and there's a couple of hints that he knows more than he's letting on, but it still lands a decent enough twist when it's revealed that he's the villain, because he actually does work to help you early on in the game. But when you actually look back on it on replays, you can tell he's clearly furthering his own aims. Admittedly, his first phase isn't my favorite, as he likes to bring up his shield and just smack you with his sword, with his scythe, but once it drops to half health, the real fight begins, and that's where things get a lot more fun. At half health, the fight begins for real, as he'll start charging around the field, using his scythe and electrical attacks just like from Phase 1, but he'll also start pulling out his crest to reveal it was a great sword, and his strongest attack where he'll try to suck you in, and if he grabs you, he sends you into a pocket dimension and performs this awesome looking sword combo. Admittedly, I actually wish this was a scripted attack that you needed to parry like Gildius does, instead of just something that you'd almost never see. That would have given this fight a little bit more challenge and cinematic flair, but that's just my opinion. Plus, I love how warped his design truly is. Sister now may have been transformed, but she kept her humanity, and potentially she went to heaven when she passed. But the only thing that awaits this warped shell of a human is the deepest depths of hell. But I do have a major complaint. While intense, his boss theme is very short and can get extremely repetitive quite quickly, which is surprising for a Ys game, especially one composed by Gendo. Then there's his voice acting, which isn't bad, quite opposite. It's amazing, with him constantly talking shit, and it further shows how twisted he truly is. And in the PC version of the game, unfortunately, he's just silent throughout the fight, which especially sucks when you kill him, and he's supposed to let out a blood-curdling scream and try to take you down with him, blowing his body apart. Memoire, please, give my man his voice box back. At least we still have his maniacal laughter when he dies, so there's that. Number 4, Chester Stoddart, Round 2. Okay, this one actually hurts me to put this low, because I know people absolutely love this fight, but he has one big issue, for me, that just holds it back. And that's that he's immune to all special attacks, meaning the only way to damage him is your basic swords. I clearly still like him, as I have him in Great Tier, but I wish you weren't stuck just whacking him with your sword constantly when you have all these other options, and they do nothing, or maybe 1 damage. Anyways, that's enough lamenting, let's talk about the positives. His moveset with his 2 swords is vastly improved, giving him a great variety of attacks such as his shockwaves, his AoEs, an explosion, sword beams, and multiple combo slashes. His boss theme, simply titled Chop, is excellent, and he's more or less the ground zero for the awesome late game human bosses that the Ys series would start using, because we all know Ernst ain't pulling any weight there. Though, this fight doesn't nearly take long enough, as his health bar is barely higher than Zerderos, and without any defenses to speak of, he won't last more than 90 seconds. I would have preferred if he had more health but wasn't immune to your 3 elemental attacks. That would have made this fight better, or hell, even do something like the next boss does, where he's able to change his weakness and you have to keep swapping it up. That would have made this fight special and let it truly shine. Still, this is a fun fight, and it's an exciting, no-nonsense human boss that was kind of the start for this series. And going forward, Kishgal, Sayas, Gruda, Shadowlar, and Ur would continue to evolve and improve. If this is your favorite boss in the game, I fully understand. Still don't like Chester as a character though, he's not getting any extra bonus points for that. Number 3, Death Phalion. See, this mini-boss has the gimmick that I wish was given to Chester instead, as that would have made that fight amazing. Anyways, Death Phalion has low health for such a late game boss, but he has his own adaptations of the elemental attacks that are fairly fun to deal with. But what really sells it for me is his defenses, as after he takes a bit of damage, he'll start putting up a barrier, making him immune to all but 1 damage type. Teal for wind, blue for fire, yellow for earth, and white for just freaking slash at him. You'll be making use of all your abilities in this fight, and I enjoy it a lot. I just wish it wasn't a gimmick for a 0-story mini-boss near the start of Valentine Castle. This would have served Chester, or maybe even Garland, much better. And it's kind of a shame that this is like the only boss where you really need to put all your abilities to the test, because even the final boss, while it can help, you kind of only need the fireballs for the final boss fight. Either way, I think Death Phalion is a great boss, and if he just had more story significance or more challenge, he might even make it into the amazing tier, but still, I would say this fight is far from bad. Number 2, Galbalan. I can't quite decide if this boss just barely makes it into the amazing tier or not, so I guess you'll know when I'm editing it. I think if RNG goes well, this is one of the most fun final bosses ever made, but if his AI decides to be an asshole, then this fight can quickly become considerably less enjoyable. Granted, his AI spurting out is a rare and hopefully won't be issue at all in Memoire, plus, when I went to record, he decided to give me a fun fight, so I'm just gonna barely slot him into Amazing Tier, I think. He has 3 distinct phases, all with the idea of finding a way to hit the giant eyeball. In the first phase, he's keeping himself shelled and protected while using his hands entirely to fight you. And this is all while Jameson Price, at least I'm pretty sure it's Jameson Price, the voice acting isn't really credited for Yablan, is talking the maddest shit, and it is awesome.
I am the Alpha and the Omega. Humans are such fragile creatures. You shall know my power well.
You shall be as ash in the wind. You shall be one with the dirt. You shall be erased. You shall eat shit and die. God, I love his voice acting. Anyways, at that point you get to phase 2 where his armor breaks, and guess what? He learns. He decides, hey, I'm gonna start sealing your abilities away, and traps them in his hands while he grows more aggressive, creating laser rays and trying to keep you at, well, trying to beat you to death, while you also have to dodge the lasers. But you can damage his hands to unseal your powers and continue hurting him, though that will actually make him angry and he'll start employing more nuclear options as he starts seeing you as a genuine threat and he starts talking considerably less as the fight goes on. And dropping to 1000 HP, he makes his final declaration.
Mankind is to fear my name.
With him weakened and on his last legs, he decides to seal all your powers away inside his body. But his broken body can't hold it in, so he condenses those powers into pure energy and fires it out at you, beginning a tennis match so deadly that Ganondorf is grinning from ear to ear without knowing why. At this point, Yablan stops talking and is fully focused and locked in, determined to kill you. But unluckily for him, I've had plenty of training. Oh, and his final boss theme is freaking awesome. And after this fight ends, it's time I acknowledge the one part of Chester's character that keeps me from absolutely despising him. And it wasn't even added into the PC version of this game until 2020. That would be his voice actor, Derek Stephen Prince. The only case where I can think of a D- tier character with an S tier vocal performance.
Helena? This is goodbye. Please, take care of yourself. Okay? Vile fiend. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're too late.
Good challenge, excellent music, solid story, and being just plain fun, Yablan is a great final boss that gets dragged down ever so slightly by potentially bad RNG, but he's still more than a worthy finale to this game. Too bad I can't say the final bosses all get better from here because we have the likes of Ruland existing. And oh boy, we'll get to that when we cover Ys 7. Number 1, in my opinion, for the best boss in Ys and Felghana, Gildias. I consider this guy the best. And I also think he's a worthy addition to the best dragon bosses don't fly theorem that we have. The design of this boss is really cool. Pun not intended, but not apologized for. His foe is mighty, so you need to damage his legs to truly bring him down and attack his head, but his many ice-based attacks will keep you moving and grooving around the increasingly perilous arena. The tail swipes and wind gusts, the ice pillars, the bites, the falling ice stalactites, it all just works very well, in making the fight fun and intense as he starts overlapping his moves the lower his health gets, in just a natural difficulty increase as his health gets lower. This fight has a very cinematic feel to it that few other bosses in the game have, and that's assisted greatly by his final phase where he'll pick you up, he's scripted to do this by the way, and drop you from the sky trying to play pachinko with your ass. Thankfully, fall damage is a myth in the world of Ys, but sharp rocks on the way down is not so much. So you need to parry the rocks as you fall, and this is an excellent way to keep the player engaged, and I again wish this would have been used in, say, the Garland fight, for example. If there's any complaint I have with this fight, it's the ice bullets can be a little hard to see depending on your graphics settings, but that's an easy enough fix, and hopefully that won't even be an issue present in Memoir. I also wish this boss would have had its own unique theme as the last of the 4 Ceiling Guardians, but you can't pick and choose, and we were still a few games out from Falcom having 7 to 10 boss themes in each of their games. Still, I think Gildias is a fantastic boss and my personal favorite in Ys Oath and Felghana. It's a lot of fun, and I can highly recommend it, at least if you can slog through the first third of the game. But that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. As of right now, this game is only available on PC with a fairly old port that takes a bit of setting finagling to get working, but with the Ys Memoire remaster remake thing right around the corner, January 7th I believe, that won't be an issue for very long. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of the new character portraits, but you can always swap back to the originals, so I have no real complaints. This video, I should mention, is not sponsored in the slightest. I just love these games, and yes, I can actually recommend Ys Oath and Felghana. The story is solid, the music is excellent, the levels are well made, the characters are, well, barring Chester, mostly pretty good, and outside of the grueling first third, most of the bosses are a fair bit of fun. With, you know what, some people might even like most of them. Just don't go defending Gyalba, that boss is trash. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing to see more videos of varying quality, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.